No one has done this in 53 years. Since Apollo 17 splashed down in December 1972, no human being has left Earth's gravitational neighborhood and traveled to the moon. Not once. An entire generation was born, grew up, and began raising children of their own in the gap between that final mission and this one. And now, as early as April 2026, 4 astronauts are set to climb into a capsule about the size of 2 minivans and aim it at the moon. Their names are Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. One of them will become the first woman to travel beyond low Earth orbit. Another will become the first person of color to do it. A third will become the first non-American. This is Artemis II, and I want to walk you through step by step what these 4 people will actually experience from the moment they strap in to the moment they hit the Pacific Ocean 10 days later. Because the reality of this mission is wilder, more claustrophobic, and more dangerous than most people realize. Let's start on the ground, launch day, Kennedy Space Center, Florida. The crew has been in quarantine for days, isolated from their families, going through medical checks, following a strict sleep schedule, and sticking to a nutrition plan calibrated down to the calorie to make sure they are hydrated and sharp for launch. They have suited up in the Orion Crew Survival System suits, bulky pressurized garments designed to keep them alive if the cabin loses pressure during ascent. These are not the sleek spacesuits you see in movies. They are practical, heavy. Think of them as wearable lifeboats. They ride an elevator up the launch tower at Pad 39B, the same pad complex that launched the Apollo missions, and they climb into their spacecraft. They have named it Integrity. It sits atop the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched, the Space Launch System, standing 322 feet tall and weighing 5.75 million pounds fully fueled. For context, that is taller than the Statue of Liberty and about 8 times heavier than a fully loaded 747. Beneath them, 2 solid rocket boosters and 4 RS-25 engines are about to produce 8.8 million pounds of thrust, roughly 15% more than the Saturn V that carried astronauts to the moon during Apollo. The RS-25s are not brand new engines. They are evolved versions of the engines that powered the space shuttle for 3 decades, rebuilt and recertified for a rocket they were never originally designed to fly on. Reed Wiseman sits in the commander's seat. Victor Glover, the pilot, sits beside him. Koch and Hansen, the 2 mission specialists, are seated behind them, 4 adults in a cabin of roughly 330 cubic feet, which NASA likes to compare to 2 minivans. That is about 60% more room than the Apollo command module gave its 3-person crews. But spread across 4 people instead of 3, the numbers do not feel especially generous. Christina Koch once said she was counting on microgravity to make the space feel bigger once they were floating. She is going to need it. The countdown reaches 0. The RS-25 engines ignite first, followed half a second later by the solid rocket boosters. This is the part nobody can truly prepare for. Former astronaut Wendy Lawrence described the sensation of a shuttle launch as feeling like someone was sitting on her chest, a force so heavy she could not even lift her arm in front of her face. The SLS is more powerful than the shuttle. The crew will feel about 3 times the force of gravity pressing them into their seats as the rocket claws its way upward through the atmosphere. Their bodies effectively weigh 3 times what they normally do. Breathing becomes harder. Moving becomes nearly impossible. The vibration from those solid boosters travels through the entire vehicle, a deep, bone-level shaking that does not let up for the first 2 minutes of flight. Then the boosters burn out and separate. The ride becomes dramatically smoother. The core stage keeps accelerating them, and about 8 minutes after launch, the main engines cut off. The silence is abrupt. The pressure disappears. Their arms float up from their laps. Pencils drift out of pockets. Anything not strapped down rises gently off whatever surface it had been resting on. They are in orbit, circling Earth in a highly elliptical path, and for the first time, the crew of Artemis II can look through their windows and see the planet below. Orion has 4 windows, small but functional, and from their altitude, the curvature of Earth is unmistakable. The thin blue line of the atmosphere, barely visible against the blackness of space, is the only thing separating 8 billion people from vacuum. For the next several hours, the mission enters a careful verification phase. This is where the crew and mission control check every spacecraft system one by one: life support, propulsion, navigation, communications, thermal control, confirming that Orion is healthy enough for the journey ahead. Because once they commit to the moon, There is no space station to dock with, no rescue vehicle waiting in orbit. They are on their own. This is also where Artemis II becomes something genuinely new. Wiseman and Glover will actually fly Orion manually, taking direct control of the spacecraft to test its handling. They will perform proximity operations, a series of maneuvers using the European Service Module's engines, to prove that a crew can precisely guide this vehicle through the kinds of procedures future Artemis missions will require, like docking with Lunar Gateway or positioning near the Moon's surface. This is not autopilot. This is hands on the controls, eyes on the instruments, proving that humans can operate this machine in deep space. The European Service Module, built by Airbus for the European Space Agency, is the workhorse attached to Orion's back end. It provides propulsion, electrical power through its 4 solar array wings, thermal control, and stores the water and gases that keep the crew alive. Without it, Orion is just a capsule. With it, Orion becomes a deep space vehicle. Once the tests in Earth orbit are complete, the crew prepares for the single most consequential engine burn of the mission, translunar injection. This is the moment Orion stops circling Earth and commits to the Moon. The upper stage of the SLS fires one last time, accelerating the spacecraft to the speed needed to break free from Earth's gravitational grip and coast toward the Moon on a long curving trajectory. After that burn, the upper stage separates and Orion is on its own. 4 people in a capsule, roughly 240,000 miles from where they need to be, carried forward by momentum while the European Service Module handles course corrections along the way. If something goes catastrophically wrong from this point on, the free return trajectory will bring them back to Earth using the Moon's gravity, the same emergency path that saved the Apollo 13 crew in 1970. That is not a comforting backup plan. That is the only backup plan. Now imagine daily life for the next 4 days as they coast outbound. Earth is shrinking behind them. Every hour home gets a little smaller in the window, and the communication delay with Houston grows a little longer. Not by much on this mission, about 1.3 seconds each way at lunar distance, but enough to make every conversation feel just slightly off. You say something, you wait. The answer comes back a beat late. It is a small reminder that you are truly leaving. Orion's cabin has been reconfigured. Koch and Hansen have stowed the footpans from their seats and folded away some equipment to open up as much living space as possible. The toilet is set up under the floor near the main hatch, taking up about 5 cubic feet. There is a curtain for privacy, which matters when one of your crewmates is 6'2" and the bathroom is the size of a coat closet. The waste system collects urine and vents it into space. Solid waste goes into bags that are sealed and stored for the journey home. There is no water recycling on this mission. The flight is short enough that NASA can keep things simple, but that also means every drop of water they drink was loaded onto the spacecraft before launch. Food comes in pouches. A small hot plate warms the meals, and a water dispenser rehydrates the freeze-dried food. The menu was chosen by the astronauts during food tastings at NASA's Space Food Systems Laboratory months before launch. The options include shrimp, macaroni and cheese, and tortillas. Jeremy Hansen, the Canadian on the crew, packed maple products and salmon bites from home. Most of the food is eaten at room temperature because the warmer has limited capacity. Imagine eating lukewarm macaroni from a foil pouch while floating inside a metal tube 100,000 miles from the nearest restaurant. That is lunch on Artemis II. There is no fridge, no oven, no table. You squeeze food out of a pouch, chase floating crumbs before they clog an air filter, and wash it down with water from a pressurized dispenser. Sleep is managed carefully. 8 hours are scheduled into each day except the first, when the timeline is compressed and the crew gets rest in broken shifts. They sleep in hammock-like bags tethered to the walls of the capsule. All 4 usually sleep at the same time. There is no bedroom, there is no door to close except the one over the toilet. The hum of the life support system never stops. The fans are constantly circulating oxygen, scrubbing carbon dioxide, and regulating cabin temperature. It is not quiet. It sounds exactly like what it is, a machine keeping them alive. Exercise is mandatory, 30 minutes every day on a device called a flywheel. It is installed below the side hatch and also serves as the step the crew uses to climb into the capsule on launch day. The flywheel works like a cable resistance machine, allowing exercises like squats, deadlifts, and rowing-style aerobic movements. It maxes out at 400 pounds of load. That sounds substantial until you compare it to the International Space Station, where astronauts have multiple exercise machines collectively weighing over 4,000 pounds and occupying 850 cubic feet. On Orion, you get a gadget about the size of a carry-on suitcase. For 10 days, it is enough to slow the muscle and bone loss that starts almost immediately in microgravity. For longer missions, it would not be. Hygiene is stripped to the essentials. There are no showers. The crew cleans up with wet wipes, liquid soap, and dry shampoo. Their personal hygiene kits include toothbrushes, razors, and a hairbrush. Everything is done in a small, designated area near the toilet. You brush your teeth, swallow the toothpaste or spit it into a wipe, and move on. Privacy is a luxury this spacecraft does not really offer. They communicate with Earth using handheld microphones, headsets, and a system that allows video calls with mission control and their families. They also have tablets and laptops loaded with procedures and notably entertainment selected before launch. NASA has not said what is on the playlist, but I would bet someone loaded at least one movie about space travel, because astronauts are exactly the kind of people who would watch a space movie while actually being in space. 4 days out, the moon starts to grow in the windows. And this is the moment the mission shifts from an engineering test to something profoundly human. These 4 people will see the far side of the moon with their own eyes. No human has seen it since 1972. Orion will pass roughly 4,700 miles beyond the moon's far side, farther from Earth than any crewed spacecraft has ever traveled. The previous record was set by Apollo 13, and Artemis II will surpass it. At their most distant point, they will be over 230,000 miles from home. Earth, visible through their windows, will be small enough to cover with an outstretched thumb. Everyone who has ever lived, everyone who has ever existed, hidden behind a fingertip. The astronauts of Apollo 8 called it the most profound loneliness they had ever experienced. Artemis II's crew will go even farther. The far side of the moon is geologically different from the near side. It is more heavily cratered, with a thicker crust and fewer of the dark basaltic plains we see when we look up at night. No human has ever observed it at this distance with the suite of modern instruments Orion carries. The crew will photograph it, study it, and gather data that feeds directly into planning for Artemis III and beyond. They will also be monitoring radiation levels constantly, because once you leave the protective cocoon of Earth's magnetic field, the rules change. Galactic cosmic rays and solar energetic particles become real threats, invisible hazards that pass through the walls of the spacecraft and through the bodies of the crew. Orion has a few shielded areas, storage bays, and the space near the toilet where the crew can shelter during a solar particle event. That is the plan. If a major solar storm erupts while they are on the far side of the moon, they hunker down next to the bathroom and wait it out. NASA's space weather team has been working overtime to refine forecasts for exactly this scenario, because a bad solar event at the wrong time could deliver a dangerous radiation dose to all 4 crew members with nowhere else to hide. After the lunar flyby, gravity does most of the work. Orion swings behind the moon, picks up gravitational momentum, and begins the long coast back toward Earth. The return trip takes roughly 4 to 5 days. During the journey home, the crew keeps monitoring systems, running medical checks, and documenting their experience. They are also the first humans to provide real-time feedback on how Orion handles deep space conditions with people aboard. That is data no simulation or uncrewed test can fully replicate. How does the cabin temperature feel after 5 days? Do the sleeping bags keep you stable, or do you drift? Does the carbon dioxide scrubber keep the air fresh enough for clear thinking? Those answers only come from putting humans inside the machine. As Earth grows larger in the windows, the crew begins preparing for the part of the mission that has caused more engineering anxiety than anything else: re-entry. During the uncrewed Artemis I flight in 2022, the Orion capsule came home and everything appeared nominal from the outside. The spacecraft splashed down safely. The cabin temperatures stayed within design limits. By all visible measures, it looked like a success. But when engineers inspected the heat shield afterward, they found something disturbing. More than 100 locations where the ablative material, a substance called avcoat, designed to burn away gradually and carry heat with it, had cracked and broken off in irregular chunks. Not the smooth, controlled erosion they expected. Jagged, unpredictable loss of material. 4 separation bolts embedded in the heat shield had partially melted through their thermal barriers, leaving deep gouges instead of the expected char pattern. The investigation took nearly 2 years. What they discovered was that gases generated inside the avcoat during re-entry had no way to escape fast enough. Pressure built up within the material, cracked it, and blasted pieces off. The root cause was connected to the skip re-entry technique used on Artemis I, where Orion dipped into the atmosphere, bounced back out into space, then re-entered a second time. That pause between atmospheric contacts allowed heat energy to build up inside the shield material without letting it ablate properly. The gases formed, the pressure rose, and the shield fractured. NASA's testing facilities had not caught it beforehand because their ground tests used higher heating rates than the spacecraft actually experienced in flight. At those higher rates, the material behaved as expected. It was the moderate, sustained heating of the skip profile that broke it. For Artemis II, NASA made a critical decision. They kept the same AVCoat heat shield material. They did not redesign it. Instead, they changed the trajectory. Orion will enter the atmosphere on a steeper, more direct path with no skip, one continuous descent from 40,000 kilometers per hour to splashdown. This reduces the amount of time the shield spends in the temperature zone that caused the cracking on Artemis 1. The trade-off is higher deceleration forces on the crew. A steeper entry means a faster slowdown. A faster slowdown means more G-forces pressing the astronauts into their seats during those final violent minutes. And violent is the correct word. Orion will hit the top of Earth's atmosphere at roughly 40,000 kilometers per hour. That is Mach 32, 32 times the speed of sound. At that speed, air molecules compress so violently in front of the capsule that they form a sheath of superheated plasma reaching 2,760 degrees Celsius. That is roughly half the temperature of the surface of the Sun. The AVCoat is supposed to absorb that heat and burn away in a controlled fashion, carrying the thermal energy with it. A few inches of resin-coated silica stand between the crew and incineration. On the other side of that material, the astronauts are supposed to feel normal cabin temperatures. That is the margin they are working with. Inside the capsule, the astronauts feel the forces building. First a gentle tug, then a steady push, then a crushing weight. As deceleration climbs, their bodies feel heavier and heavier. Breathing takes effort. The windows glow orange, then white, as plasma wraps around the capsule. Communications black out briefly as that envelope of ionized gas blocks radio signals. For a few minutes, the crew of Artemis II is completely alone. No voice from Houston, no telemetry, just heat, pressure, and the sound of a spacecraft screaming through the atmosphere at a speed no human beings have had to endure in this way for generations. When the capsule slows below supersonic speed, the drogue parachutes deploy, jerking the spacecraft into a more stable descent attitude. Then 3 massive main parachutes billow open above the Pacific Ocean near San Diego. The capsule swings beneath them, dropping toward the water. Splashdown is hard, not gentle. The capsule slams into the ocean surface and bobs in the swells, while a U.S. Navy recovery team aboard a San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock moves in to secure the vehicle and extract the crew. Divers enter the water, attach flotation collars and tow lines, and the capsule is winched aboard. The hatch opens. 4 people breathe outdoor air for the first time in 10 days. Their legs will feel weak. Their sense of balance will be off after 10 days in microgravity. Even standing upright will require concentration as their inner ears recalibrate to a world where down means something again. 685,000 miles, the farthest any humans have traveled in more than half a century, and all of it inside a capsule that Christina Koch compared to a minivan. There is something almost absurd about that comparison, and I think it captures the whole mission. We are sending 4 people farther from Earth than any living human has ever gone, and they are doing it in a space the size of a family car. They will eat rehydrated shrimp from a pouch. They will sleep tethered to a wall. They will exercise with what is basically a glorified resistance device bolted to the floor. They will clean themselves with wet wipes. And they will stare through their windows at the far side of the moon, at the whole Earth reduced to a blue dot, and they will know that the only thing bringing them home is a heat shield that cracked the last time it flew. That is not a failure of engineering. That is the reality of what exploration really means. We do not go to the moon because it is safe. We never did. Apollo 13 proved that. Columbia and Challenger proved it in the most painful way possible. Every crewed mission beyond Earth orbit is a bet. A calculated, exhaustively analyzed, meticulously planned bet that the engineering will hold, that the math is right, that the materials will do what the models say they will do. Artemis II is that bet made with full knowledge of what went wrong last time, and with the conviction that the fix is good enough. 4 people are wagering their lives on it, and honestly they understand that better than anyone. They have seen the photos of the cracked heat shield, they have sat through the briefings, they have asked the hard questions, and they have chosen to go anyway. Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, Jeremy Hansen, They will strap in, feel the engines ignite beneath them, and leave Earth behind for 10 days. And when they come back, if the shield holds, if the parachutes deploy, if the ocean catches them right, they will have reopened a door that has been closed since 1972. Not the door to the moon. We opened that a long time ago. The door to going back. If you enjoyed this journey into the future of human spaceflight, like, share, and subscribe to Exilume for more deep space stories, cosmic mysteries, and the most extraordinary missions humanity dares to attempt.